I was born in an Armenian refugee camp in Beirut, which used to be called Karantina Maslach. Karantina was actually the name of the hospital for contagious and incurable diseases next to the camp, and Maslach was the city's busiest slaughterhouse. The camp itself was nothing more than a heap of shacks built of rusty sheets of tin, pieces of plywood, shreds of army tents, etc. There were a network of sewage channels running between the huts, carrying in them human waste and animal intestines, where refugee families lived in cramped conditions with their children. The whole place was bordered by the city's principal rubbish dump. There were rolling hills upon hills of rubbish going into the horizon, steaming and stinking in the Lebanese heat. The air was so terribly polluted that it couldn't even support the flight of a single butterfly. That was my home, my sweet home. During this coronavirus self-isolation, I have nothing to do really but to sit down and think and contemplate. So while I'm sitting here alone, locked down in self-isolation, I thought I had best tell you the story that many, many people throughout my professional life have asked me to tell. Over the years, for example, when I gave talks at the United Nations or at the All-Party Parliamentary Group at the House of Commons for Street Children, or when I conducted symphony orchestra, people often ask me, why don't I speak more about my life story? They all seem to be fascinated by the life I've lived. You know, just because I've got all these accolades, people assume that I must have been brought up in some privileged background. Good Lord, far from it, if they only knew, if only they knew. I've been asked many times what my first memories of the camp are. Well, I have three distinct memories, only three. The first one is that I was with a group of people on the beach on a sunny day. They were having laughter and having fun. I was quite little at the time. Then someone lifted me up and put my feet in the sea, in the shoreline among the pebbles. When I looked down, I saw luminescent snakes in the water. Gold, purple, black and silver snakes slithering and intercoiling around my feet, around my ankle. Obviously, it was the sunlight refracted in the water, but I was scared. I got so scared I thought they were really snakes and ran out and hugged the legs of a woman. The woman's long brown cotton dress looked like a tree trunk for me when I hugged it. It must have been my mother, but I couldn't remember seeing her face because I was hugging her legs and thighs and I couldn't see above her face up there. The second memory I have of the camp was the camp's church. The church itself was constructed of corrugation iron, flat sheets of tin and timber with a storm-tilted steeple bearing an enormous bronze bell. Inside the church was filled with candles. There was an old priest shaking chains of silver incense burner, and smoke was puffing out of it. So the whole place was filled with this thick amber light behind candles and the sound of women wailing. They had black scarves around their heads and tied in little knots under their chins. And the camp's choristers, like the butcher, the cobbler, and so on, chanting an old Armenian hymn, obviously the hymn for the dead. On the altar was a plain wooden box, like a coffin, and there was a woman lying in it. I thought she was asleep. I vaguely remember recognizing her, but of course now I know she was, in fact, my mother who had died giving birth to my sister. I was so embarrassed that she had gone to sleep in a wooden box, dressed up in this fancy dress and a silver cross on her chest. I wanted to ask her what on earth was she doing, going to sleep in this wooden box in front of everybody. I was so angry that I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. I shut my eyes instead firmly and didn't want to ever open them again. My third memory is I was in our wooden hut, lying down to go to sleep. But strangely, my mother wasn't there. She's always there when I get to sleep. Instead, one of our neighbors had come to look after me. And my mother's mattress, neat as it was made up, undisturbed, where she used to sleep. And her broken sandals were still beside her mattress. That was such a strange feeling to see my mother's mattress neat and her sandals beside her. I couldn't go to sleep. I just lay there waiting for her to come back. But of course she never did. She never came back. So these are the three memories I have of the camp. After my mother's death, I was sent to an orphanage, the Bird's Nest Orphanage. This was in mid-1950s. I'm telling this story to remember and honor all the orphans that had lived in the Bird's Nest Orphanage and still live there. I visit them at least 2 or 3 times a year. Please subscribe to hear the following episode. You too will be fascinated with this most extraordinary story. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you.